My friend just shared with me an incredibly powerful story that happened to him. It's impacting the way that I'm approaching my high holidays, and I therefore feel compelled to share that story with you. This friend of mine had been walking into his office. He worked for Lema'an Achai, a charitable organization in Ramat Beit Shemesh. As he walked in, he was met with a very unique sight. All of his colleagues were standing by their desks and crying. But not just crying, bawling. Standing near the front door was a single mom from the community, a beneficiary of his organization. And she was bawling too. What happened? So, the details of this story, I've got to tell you in advance, I heard firsthand from the single mom who it happened to. And this is what she described. Her 14-year-old son was traveling from Jerusalem to Beit Shemesh on the 4:15 bus. He just finished a visit with his dad and he was traveling home. He looks around the bus and he sees right next to him in the back row, where nobody else was, a wad of money tied in a rubber band. Looks around again, there's nobody there. Picks up the money, there's no name, there's no number, there's just a wad of cash. He didn't want to play with it. He brought it home to his mom and said, "Mom, look what I found on the bus." They sit down together, take off the rubber band and count up the money. There was 5,150 shekels in that wad. What to do? That money would be so helpful. If they kept it, it would go a long way for their family. But they both realized that that's not the right thing to do. They have to try to find the owner. They called Superbus, who owns the bus that the boy was on, and Superbus responded, "Sure, if you want to give the money to us, we'll try to keep our eyes and ears open." They're like, no thank you. We're gonna try by ourselves to find the owner of this money. The mom had a friend who was actually a bus driver, and she gave him a call. She asked him to keep his eyes open in case anybody mentions that they lost money on a bus. A couple days later, this friend calls the mom back and says, "Guess what? There was a posting that was going around on Facebook. A mom had mentioned that her son, her teenage son, had lost money on a 4:15 bus. Perhaps it's him." So they connect each other and they speak, and it turns out that that teenage boy lost 5,150 shekels in a rubber band. The mom was ecstatic that the money was found. This young man comes over to the house to pick up his money. And clearly this boy was somewhat disheveled. He'd been going through a very rough time. He'd actually lost his faith in humanity, had been going through a very difficult time at home, and it turns out that he also lost his faith in God. As he shows up and sees a single mom and her son enthusiastically returning his cash, he broke down and he expressed how appreciative he was and how thankful he was and how this has given him such a paradigm shift for his own life. He gave some money to the teenage son. He gave some money to the single mom and said, "Please treat yourselves to something. Thank you guys so much for the money." 2 months later, the single mom receives a call. It was her downstairs neighbor in the building. Apparently, this woman had received a call from somebody else who she knew that said the following: "Do you know any single moms in the community who could use some financial assistance?" And this woman said, "I actually do. I have a neighbor upstairs who could really use some help." "Great, I'm bringing over some money." The neighbor comes upstairs with an envelope. And as the single mom receives the envelope and feels it, she realizes that this is not a typical envelope. She calls her kids around, they sit in the dining room, and together they open up this envelope. They count the money that's inside of it. Donated anonymously to them was 6,000 shekels in cash. They all start crying. They all recognize they had just been given a tremendous gift. Clearly they were being repaid for what they had done, returning the cash that they found on the bus. But what's so unique about this story and what impacted me so much is that my friend's colleagues were not crying because what God had done. They were not crying because the gift that she had received of 6,000 shekels. They were crying because of what she did with it. She took that money, she went straight to Lema'an Achai's office, she took out 500 shekels and she said, "Here you go. It's my turn to give. I've taken so much. It's my turn to give back. I want to help another family who's going through a difficult time." We all receive gifts. in different types of packages. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's talent, sometimes it's other resources, but every time it's something. God gives every one of us gifts. What do we do with them? When we receive something, when we have something, are we able to take whatever it is that we have and help others with it? With the high holidays approaching, I'm always reminded for the last 15 years of what my Rebbe in Yeshiva, what Rebbe Kalish from Waterbury, what he taught me 15 years ago. That as we plan our year ahead, and as we talk to God on Rosh Hashanah and we say, this is what I'd like to do, this is what I'd like to accomplish. If we're able to transform our year in a year where we're helping others, taking the resources, whatever they may be, taking those resources and helping other people lead a happier and more meaningful life, then God is much more likely to grant us a successful year. Because if that success, whatever it may be, is used to not just benefit our lives, but the lives of our brothers and sisters, the lives of our community members, then that's what God wants to do with those gifts. And we have the blessing to pay it forward. Let's take a lesson from the single mom. Let's take our gift packages that we have received and find ways where we could use those gifts to make the lives of others better, to pay it forward, to ensure that there will be people this year who will be leading better, happier, more successful, healthier lives because of us. And if we could show God this high holiday season that our lives will not just be selfish but selfless, that whatever gifts He gives us, we're going to use them to help others, then I bless us all that we should all be granted our best years yet.